and good morning. We're with McAlester Radio, KTMC AM and FM, and KMCO as well as KNED. Got a very special guest on the telephone. This is becoming a regular event. We've got Senator Jim Inhofe on the line, and I'm going to pull a little bit of a senatorial move, and say I yield the rest of my time to the gentleman from Oklahoma.
Well, that's just a little bit too easy, Christopher. But I do like to, and I have been doing this for years now, occasionally when things come up, to come and just kind of give a live report on what's happening. So many things through the media are just not all that accurate. And so I just got back from the East China Sea, South China Sea, and a lot of countries down there that have been our allies. They're now being jeopardized a little bit. So we have a lot of things we can talk about, so shoot away here.
Well, do tell us about your visit to the East, the China Sea there, and I also want to talk to you about maybe some of the cybersecurity initiatives in place.
Okay. We actually are having a hearing on that this morning at 10 o'clock on the cyber thing. But let me real quickly, this is a new threat out there that I'd like to share with people because, we're going to have to deal with these things. In the areas, I just got back from the Philippines, Taiwan, South Korea, Tokyo, Guam, Okinawa, in that whole area. Now, all of them that I mentioned have historically been very strong allies of ours. However, right now, the China is raising its head and getting implanted in that whole world out there, and is kind of making us look bad. What they have done is reclaimed land with no authority, no ownership. They have, in my opinion, illegally reclaimed land. What they do is they go through in the shallow water in the East, in the South China Sea, and they start cultivating it and then building it and pumping land back in, sand back in, and creating their own islands. They've now done this with over 3,000 acres, and it's just like they're planning for war. All of them have, all of their armaments are there. They're ready to detonate things, and so the allies that I just now mentioned, they're pretty scared over there because we're doing nothing, and yet all they see is the buildup of China. So anyway, and because I think I've been in an active role in the Senate Armed Services Committee, and so this is an area that we were very much concerned with, and at the same time. I was over there. I mentioned South Korea. Well, North Korea that's where this Kim Jong-un guy is now, he's been building up his capability. And on November 28th, he fired a weapon that can go all the way to McAlester, Oklahoma, from North Korea. And so that's a scary thing, and that's something that we have to deal with, and that's one of the reasons for this trip. I just kind of want to start off with that to make sure that people are known that we're on top of this. And we paid a price when we had 8 years under President Obama. Like a lot of liberals, he just didn't really believe in a strong national defense. And consequently, we have really been suffering. We're starting to rebuild it now. We passed a budget that's going to start rebuilding our military. His policy that he had for 8 years said, you can't put any money into the military unless you put an equal amount into social programs. And so that's what we're trying to change now, and I think it's a welcome change.
Absolutely. I have to say I'm glad I wasn't, I'm a veteran. I'm glad I wasn't serving under his tenure.
Well, yeah, and you talk to, if anyone questions this, because, when I was in the Army 100 years ago, we were unquestionably strong. We were willing to take on anything for freedom. And we went through an 8-year period where it was really a downsizing of our military. We got to the point at the end of the Obama administration where our ground capabilities for our United States Army were only 30% of them would actually work if they were called into combat. Our F-18s that the Marines use, 62% of those didn't work because he was not maintaining equipment. So we're having to start, and we're doing it pretty rapidly now. We are building up again. Another thing I want to mention is The president's been talking about the highways, the infrastructure, the roads, and so forth, and this is good because we're overdue in getting these things done. There's an old document that nobody reads anymore. It's called a Constitution. That tells you what we're supposed to be doing up here. Number one, defending America, and number two, they called them post roads back there, but building infrastructure. That's our should be our primary responsibility, and that's what this president's going to do. And I'll be there with him because I chair the committee that is going to be rebuilding. So we passed a thing that was called the FAST Act a year ago, and it was very successful. And we now can see construction going on in the state of Oklahoma, but we need to do a lot more, and that's what we're in the process of doing now. There's an op-ed piece. When was that? About a week ago? Yeah, a week ago in the Wall Street Journal that I had in there talking about what we were going to do. And in fact, if you want to get that, my website is inhofe.senate.gov, and you can pull that up on our website, and you can see what we're going to do in rebuilding our infrastructure in America. At the same time, you can look at some of the benefits of the regulations that we're doing away with, and that's having the result of increasing our economy, and a new prosperity is hitting not just Oklahoma, but America.
Outstanding. Well, Senator, you and the president together are just doing a fantastic job there in Washington.
Well, a lot of people don't like him. I'm sure you get a lot of call-ins, Christopher, talking about how he's brash, and yeah, he tweets things out there that I wish he'd have someone proof a little bit before they hit the wires. But
yeah.
And the bottom line is, he is going to. I mean, we're rebuilding our military. We are now doing away with the kind of regulations that are destroying the economy. And as a result of his efforts and working with him, we now have increased the economic activity. During the 8 years of Obama, the economy grew an average of 1.5% each year. This president's already up well over 3% a year. Now, why is that significant? It is because a lot of the things that we're doing, like paying for a tax reduction, you can do because you're increasing economic activity. For each 1% of increase, that translates into about $3 trillion of new revenue. And, this wasn't a Republican idea. This all started with John Kennedy back in 1962. He said, we got to get more revenues into the federal government for the social programs, that his Great Society programs. And so he reduced the rates. He said the best way to increase revenue is to reduce marginal tax rates, and that frees up the economy. So he did that, and it increased by 1964 from 1962 by 30%. Then along came Ronald Reagan. He said the same thing. They reduced the tax rates, the highest rate from 70% to 50% in comparable reductions. As a result of that, the total amount, I know this sounds a little boring here, but it's very significant. People understand this. The total amount of revenue that came in 1981 was $469 billion. Now, as a result of reducing the rates, that increased to $720 billion. So that has worked in the past. It's going to work now. The reduction in the tax rates that everyone listening to us right now is enjoying, that's going to have the effect of increasing revenue coming into the federal government.
Yeah, I know that it seems odd, but I know that my paycheck went up a little, because I'm on the low end of the tax scale. And therefore...
Yeah, Christopher, I came back on American Airlines, and they didn't know who I was, but the flight attendant was showing everyone a check, $1,000 check. Then in checking into that, American Airlines, after the tax bill passed and the reductions came in, they cut a $1,000 check for everyone who's not an officer of the company. And I'm talking about all the flight attendants, the pilots, and everybody else. And the same thing is true. In fact, if you want to get the list of the what's happening in Oklahoma in terms of people's reductions in their tax rates, go to my website, inhofe.senate.gov, and we have a list of all the companies and how they're responding to the tax reform that we just experienced in the last few weeks.
Okay, that's inhofe.senate.org.
No,
.gov, I mean. I apologize.
Inhofe.senate.gov.
.gov. I
Yeah,
apologize.
and you can also, if you'd like, you can pull up the reductions in the regulations. For example, anyone listening to us right now, probably half the people listening to us are farmers, ranchers. Their major concern was a regulation that Obama put in there to take the jurisdiction of our water regulations from the states to the federal government. And that would mean that anyone you get in the western part of the state, not where you are, but in the western part where it's very arid, once the federal government gets involved there, they would start regulating it, and all of a sudden our panhandle would be considered a wetlands. So that's one of the many regulations. So if you want to know what the rest of them are, we have a list of 71 regulations that we have either repealed from the Obama administration or are in the process of doing it. And that's one reason for the prosperity that we're enjoying right now, because the regulations are what was holding the economy down. It gets a little complicated, but it's worked throughout history, and right now we're back doing it with this president that a lot of people don't like. He's brash, I understand that, but he is sure reasserting our position as the leader of the free world. I feel
Senator,
good about him.
Senator, I apologize. I cut you off there. I realize we've kept you a while, but if you have just another minute or two, I know that you're all about securing our borders and securing our country and a strong defense, and with that comes a strong cyber defense. Do you have a minute to speak on that?
I do. In fact, anyone, 8 o'clock, no, it'd be 10 o'clock Eastern time, which would be 9 o'clock your time. If you want to turn on TV, on, what would that be on? C-SPAN 2, maybe? Yeah, I'll be chairing a committee on cyber, and we're actually going to be interviewing the new guy coming in to run our cyber warfare department. It's a threat. A minute ago we talked about China and some of our other adversaries, and they are an adversary, whether they want to admit it or not, because they are competing with us throughout the entire world. They're the ones who are could be in a position to create problems with our companies, with our federal government, by breaking into things that would otherwise be secret and exposing them. And so cyber warfare is something that's a little bit complicated, but it's something that's going on right now and something that we are really going to be paying attention to. It's part of our military right now. That's where it is being handled. And if you'd like to be up to date on the threats, you can hear it live just in a couple hours from now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Senator. Yeah, that's a big thing for me. I just back in July of last year finished a master's program in cybersecurity.
Oh, I don't want to talk to you. You know a lot more about it than I do.
So I've been keeping an eye on things, and trying to come up with ideas, and I've been back and forth to the president and to other dignitaries when I come up with an idea. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts on it were. I appreciate your time this morning.
Christopher, thanks so much, and keep people aware, okay?
Will do. Until next time, Senator, take care.
All right, thank you.